Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking a little bit about resto druid azerite in 8.3, specifically for Mythic Plus. We're going to be going over the traits, which ones are good, which ones are bad, and where you can get pieces with these traits on them. Alright, let's dive right into it. First, let's talk a little bit generally. A lot of the resto druid specific traits that buff your healing spells are unfortunately not very strong right now, at least not in Mythic Plus. You've got traits like Waking Dream, Autumn Leaves, Early Harvest, Lively Spirit. These kinds of traits you generally want to stay away from. They simply don't perform very well in Mythic Plus. And just aren't what you're looking for. However, there are a couple of notable exceptions to this, namely three. We've got Growth Tending, Rampant Growth, and High Noon. Let's talk a little bit about each one of them. So, first we have Growth Tending. This has been a staple of resto druid play for pretty much all of BFA. It simply leaves a healing over time effect on the target of your Swiftmend. This not only does a nice amount of healing on its own, but it also counts as a healing over time effect, which means it triggers your mastery and it thus increases all the healing taken by the target for those 9 seconds. This is a great trait. However, I want to stress that the primary function of this trait is generally to increase the healing taken by the target by way of your mastery. That means you don't really want to stack this trait. There are some people who enjoy stacking it, and it is not the worst thing. It's alright to get multiples of this trait. However, I would not recommend aiming for it. It simply isn't the strongest build out there, even though it is alright. Ideally you should be running one of these traits. Secondly, we've got Rampant Growth. This simply spreads the regrowth effect to the target of your Life Bloom. So for example, if you have it on your tank, then he will continuously get a refresh on his regrowth duration whenever you regrowth to somebody else. This is a nice little trait. It also increases the healing over time effect of your regrowth as well. This is simply another tool to spread your healing over time effects sort of for free, and thus increasing your overall healing by way of spreading your mastery to more targets. For this reason, it's very strong, and again, what you're looking for in this trait is primarily this unique effect of spreading your regrowth, so you only want one of this trait as well. This one should never be stacked, in my opinion. Lastly, for the class-specific traits worth mentioning are High Noon. High Noon, in previous seasons you would see people run this trait a lot. People would often run like 2 or even 3 of this trait in Mythic Plus. It boosts the damage of your Sunfire as well as increasing the radius of which the High Noon is, or Sunfire is applied. This is a good little damage boost. However, it was significantly nerfed in 8.3, which means it is nowhere near as good as it was in previous seasons, and for that reason I think you should again only be running one of this trait. You're primarily looking for the extra radius increase. This is going to help you a lot with simply only having to use one global for applying Sunfire to an entire pack. Oftentimes when packs are a little bit spread out, you might need 2 or even 3 globals to get Sunfire on everything, and whenever you need to reapply the Sunfire, it's kind of a big chore having to use those multiple globals. However, with High Noon, that should not really be a problem. So That is another good one-off trait. Well, since none of the other healing related traits are really that good, what do we want to fill out those 3 extra slots with, you might wonder? Well, generally speaking, you want to look for stat procs or stat increasers of some kind. Good examples of this are found on pretty much all the Mythic Plus pieces, where you have traits like Bloodrite or Swirling Sands or Meticulous Scheming that all just increase your base stats in one way or another. These of course come in some varying quality, but generally speaking all of them are pretty strong. The other option that you can use to increase your stats is a new trait, new for 8.3, called Heart of Darkness, that was introduced and is present on every single piece from the raid. This simply increases all your secondary stats by a relatively small amount, but permanently so, as long as you're wearing above 25 corruption. Since this is something you want to be doing anyway, you should generally be running between 25 and 40 corruption, in my opinion, to avoid getting those grand delusions, which can be very deadly in Mythic Plus. That means this is kind of a no-brainer. It should always be active for you, and it is a good amount of extra stats. So how do we actually get a decent setup with these? It can be a little bit tricky since you have all of these one-off traits. It can be easy to get into a situation where you're sort of forced to run multiple rampant growth or growth tending or something like that, and it's just not quite optimal. It can also be a little bit difficult to find high noon pieces, especially at the start of the season like this, because high noon pieces or high noon is not present on any of the pieces from the new raid, which means you have to get them from Residum or PvP. So what do you want to be looking for? In short, I think there are good options for both headpieces and chest pieces from the raid. From the second boss in the raid, Mount, you have the Stygian Guise, which is a very, very strong headpiece. I would highly recommend getting this. If you're a Mythic Raider, then you should probably be bonus rolling this boss, and seeing as it's an early boss in the raid, pretty soon, even if you're not in a raiding guild, people will probably start pugging this boss, as it's not too terribly difficult. This is a very good piece all around. It's got the choice of either growth tending or rampant growth on it, which means it's flexible, can fit in with other pieces. It's got Heart of Darkness, as well as good 3rd and 4th ring traits. When it comes to chest pieces, you've got either the Darkheart robe or the Flesh Beast Cuirass from Vexiona and Carapace of Nusalt, respectively. In my opinion, the Darkheart robe from Vexiona is slightly stronger. It's got just marginally better defensive traits, as well as having overwhelming power on it, which is one of the few 3rd ring traits that are really noteworthy as being quite a bit above the rest. However, Flesh Beast Cuirass is worth mentioning because seeing as it drops from Carapace of Nusalt, it will naturally be 10 item levels higher, which means if you get it from Heroic, it's going to be 475, which means it's only 5 item levels below what you get from Residum, so it can be a very good option early on in the tier, maybe, before you get decked out in all 475 or 480 azerite, even though its secondary traits are a little bit worse. It will also probably be the best option in the late game, simply because once you kill this boss on Mythic and get this chest piece at 485, it will just be higher item level than anything else you can get, and item level on azerite pieces is simply valuable enough that it's gonna be stronger than the other options. However, when it comes to shoulder pieces, there are no real good options from the raid. There are a couple of very poor shoulders, I think from Drustagath. Probably wrong on that, but the two out of the two shoulder pieces that drop from the raid, the only one really worth mentioning is the Great Convergence shoulders that drop from Nasot himself. These are not great, to be honest, primarily because they've got Gemhide as their only real option when it comes to defensive traits, which is quite weak, generally speaking, for Mythic Plus, which means that they're simply a little bit weaker. On top of that, they are forced to run Rampant Growth. It's the only real option in the first tier of this shoulder, and that would be the same situation as the Flesh Piece Cuirass, which means you absolutely cannot run these two pieces together. The two azerite pieces that are 10 item levels above the rest just don't match together at all, which means you should be going for the stronger of the two options, which would be the chest piece, Flesh Piece Cuirass. So with that being said, I think it is very natural to use your Residuum here at the start of the season to roll for shoulders and try to get a good piece from Mythic Plus, just because the raid pieces are not that great. When you're rolling for shoulders from Mythic Plus, you're looking for either the Sanguine Monstrosity shoulders, the Gold Tasseled shoulders, or the Pistoliers. The best option here would be Sanguine Monstrosity. These are incredibly strong and sort of the gold standard that you should be looking for. So that's gonna be it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions regarding azerite or resto druids in general, please let me know in the comments below.